Get our show canceled.
How is related to the Inuvik?
Oh my gosh.
So many okay, here.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Uvlumi Qaikaffi. Oh, already got it wrong. Uvlumi Quyanaq Qaikaffi Pangma Nunaptingnun. Uvlumi. Sorry. Uvanga atiga Margaret Nuxanilayas. And Uvanga atiga
Alatkashik.
Alagasik.
Uvanga atiga Shulgaluk. Uvanga atiga Gerry Kisoun. Apapaga Victor Allen in Uvagut Mackenzie Delta. Mama Bertha Allen Vantat Quichin Old Crow Yukon. My name is Gerry Kisoun from Inuvik, Northwest Territories.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. Yourself, Margaret?
Doing well. We practiced for how long to say the intro in the language? Only for me, this one time I needed to say it, I mixed up. But that's okay, because I'm learning the language.
Okay, there's everybody is wondering what kind of a show and everything else. You know?
Yeah.
So it's good. Yeah,
so how are you?
Been doing good. Yeah, keeping busy.
Yeah.
Keeping busy.
You've been on the show a few times, and I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself the way you would introduce yourself to an elder. just letting us know. You said who your mother and father is, and
Yes.
just talking about a little bit more of where you're from and where they're from, and just hearing a little bit so we can understand.
You know, a lot of times when I go to the elders, I like to, you know, the elders, I like to say {NUnapismit} to our elders, you know, and it's like it's a salutation, {NUnapismit), and you haven't seen them for a while, Kagadaima, you know, like long time no see. And you know, I was born and raised in the Mackenzie Delta, actually 60 kilometers northwest of the community of Укlavik, back in 1953. And my father is a trapper. His name is Victor Allen. Comes from the Mackenzie Delta, Uvagut and Inuvik background. And my mother is Uvvagut out of Old Crow, Yukon. And they met while they were going to the residential school in Укlavik at the All Saints School, Anglican school. And they started raising a family in the Delta. I had an older brother named Denny. And when my mother was ready to have me, my father was out on the trap line getting the tent frame ready for trapping muskrats at the start of March. Every year we do that. And it was close to the end of February that my mother was at the camp. And early in the morning, she's having her labor pains to have a baby, and my brother's there. So my father's over there, getting the tent frame ready over there, and it's 20 kilometers away from where our camp is. And there was a young fellow there by the name of Henry. We called him Henry Kenneth. I actually thought Henry was my brother, but he was, you know, he was sort of adopted into the family, I guess, from one other family, and helping my parents, helping them with the kids, with my brother, and also helping around the camp, maybe with the dogs, you know, feeding dogs and so on. He was a teenager. So when my mother was ready to have her baby, Henry said, I'm going to run to Укlavik. It's like, I think Укlavik was like 30 kilometers away, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to run to Укlavik, and I'm going to get to CHAK. That was a radio station in them days, 860 on your radio dial, and I'll send a message to Victor, that's my dad's name, and let him know that you're at the camp, ready to have a baby. So Henry left. I guess Henry left. I wasn't there yet. Henry left. He's on his way to Укlavik. My mother couldn't wait anymore, so she dressed up my brother, put him on a snowshoe. She had a little snowshoe.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she tied a piece of string on that, and she started walking towards where my dad was.
Yeah.
Because following the dog team trail,
Yeah.
you know, then you've got to go down the bank, across the creek, the river, up the bank on the other side, across the lakes, and did that for a number of times, and it was like 20 kilometers later that still pulling my brother, that she made it to my dad's springtime camp for trapping muskrats, and it was there that she made it by the dog yard. I think she pretty well collapsed, so tired,
Yeah.
from walking, and Uncle Joe comes out.
Like yeah.
Uncle Joe comes out and says, saw my mother down beside the dogs over there. He says, Victor, Bertha's right there. He comes out, what's going on? Ready to have a baby.
Yeah.
So he hooked up the dogs, put my mother in the toboggan and my brother.
Yeah.
And it was quite late in the evening, I think it was, and he mushed the hell out of those dogs until he got to the place I was born called {NUnapismit}. That's where I got that name, {NUnapismit}.
Oh, okay.
To see from a long distance. And that's where I was born.
Yeah.
I got across the river, up on the bank. My dad had a lot of cousins that were there, and my mother said we were all teenage girls.
Yeah.
A lot of the cousins there, they brought my mother inside the house, Little log house, mud floor, and I was born.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so I mean, my brother was there too, and me, and then my uncle Joe, he ran from the camp back to the house. He didn't want to. It was 10 kilometers away, I think, something like that. He didn't want to stay there. My dad said, "You stay and look after the tent overnight. I'll be back tomorrow. I got to get Bertha to ऊvagut, to Old Harry's, to a monk's camp, you know, to he's going to have a baby." So Joe, my mother said, every once in a while, look back and she see in the moonlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Uncle Joe way back there running. No way he's going to stay there. So I actually phoned him a couple of years ago. He's 12 years old. He's 12 years older than I am. A couple of years ago, he turned 80. So I phoned him. I was out hunting. I was down along the coast there, west of Tuck. I phoned him and I said, "Happy birthday, Uncle. How's your day going? I hear you're 80 years old." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Boy, I'm sure glad you didn't jump in that toboggan with my dad and my mother and my brother." I said, "I might have been born in that portage across from ऊvagut."
Oh.
He said, "No." He said, "You would have been born in that long lake."
Oh my goodness.
But that's sort of the story of sort of how I came into this world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a number of years ago, I took my mother actually back to ऊvagut, the place I was born. And you know, she was telling the story because she was a teenager.
She was.
I think my mother might have been 18 or so when she had me, and she wrote her story about having a baby in the Arctic, in the cold of the winter, and she was going to send it to Harlequin Romance because that was what she said. That's what a lot of us teenage girls were reading. Was Harlequin Romance.
Oh, that's
She could
cool.
never find the story again after she wrote it. And
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's ever found it, but that's
That'd
where
be
I was
cool
born.
To find. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was born, and I
So
spent the first 3 years of my life on the trap line. with
I
my
was
parents.
just gonna say, so you
Yeah.
were like, before you were even born, you were being rushed in the dog sled out on the land.
Right in the
Yeah.
no ambulances in them days.
Can you imagine
Yeah,
how
just-
calm you had to be?
I know. I mean, you know, that's right. I mean, you know, a mother, any mother ready to have a baby. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, men don't
Yeah.
totally understand what a woman goes through. I mean,
Yeah.
they should hook up some of those machines to some of them and get them to feel what it feels like, and
Yeah.
maybe tell a story afterwards. But anyways, that's where I was born, and I spent the first 3 years of my life out on the trap line at our camp in the Delta, and then the spring of 1956, my father moved us into Inuvik. By then we'd lost my older brother. We lost him to the river in Qaikaffi
Oh no.
in the fall of 1953. But I had another sister, Yvonne, was born in Qaikaffi, and then we moved into Inuvik in the spring of 1956, right after the ratting seasons. I think it was June 15th we moved in here. We came in with old man Sumner. We came in from the Quyanaq. And my father put up a tent down along the riverbank. And we lived in that tent for the first 3 years that we were here. So my father came in to help build this community, this Government of Canada community. And my mother was a homemaker.
Yeah.
So in them days, we were using lots of canvas shoes. We were using like maybe old woolen pants that might have gotten put away, and my mother just sewed them up and made them into clothing for us kids. And we had lots of fur mitts, like, you know, and moose skin ones, like my grandmother always used to make them. And we all had parkies, pullover parkies, and that was our clothes every day.
Clothing, yeah.
And we played. We spent a lot of time outside.
Yeah.
And as I was getting a little bit older from down there, it was my job as the oldest one to go to the river and get water from that river right down here, and bring it to my mother in her tent, and she would strain it, and that became our drinking water. There's a little bit of mud in there, but
Yeah.
yeah, I did that for a while, and we stayed in the tent 3 winters there We got some cold days. We had some, I think, -50 for sure. And then I had another sister born to the family in the fall of 1956, right down along the river there. Her name was Shirley.
Oh yeah. We're gonna have Shirley on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna schedule to have
then
Shirley on.
I think it was about 3 years later that we were in the tent that my mother went to government and said, you can't have all these Indigenous people building your Government of Canada community.
Yep.
And you have all your government workers living at the east end of the community already in A-frame homes and some of them already with running water and showers.
Yeah.
Whereas all your Indigenous people are living in tents, building this community, living at the west end of town in tents and using outhouses and honey buckets. So that was what she did the one time. And then we moved to another big tent up in Happy Valley, they call it. And I believe my uncle built a bedroom on the side of it and made some room for my mom and dad. And by then there might have been about 4 kids in the family. We were there for another year or two, and then we moved into what they call a 512, 512 square feet, 16 feet wide by 32 feet long. We moved into that, and a partition right at the back. Mom and Dad had their own room, and us kids, we had another room. It was like, wow, that was huge compared to living in a tent.
Yeah.
You know. And then when we walked in the door like this, when you went to the right, we had an indoor outhouse.
Yeah.
No more sitting in the cold. No more hemorrhoids. We went there, and right next to it, we had a barrel for water, for my mother's water bucket. And when I got a little bit older, when I was 12 years old and 13, I had a dog team. I had 4 dogs, and I used to go to the river and I used to haul ice for my mother because there was a cost to the water. Everything costs, even the water costs. When the water truck came along, it's only a 45-gallon barrel, but it cost for the water. So wintertime, I used to get ice. We put ice in there, and that way it supplemented our water. And we had a little oil stove. That was neat. No more cutting wood, no more sawing like that, and no more chopping. And we never had to go across the river anymore, really, and find dry wood and wood for cook stove or something, you know. And then that's what we did. And that was, I don't know, we were in that 512 until 1966, I think it was. And my mother got involved in what they call a cooperative.
Yeah.
And she got a hold of a number of families in our community, and they started up what they call Co-op Hill.
Yeah.
Up that first subdivision
Just
up there.
Yeah.
So my mother and them, they decided on that subdivision, and they decided sort of how many lots they were going to have. And they basically they said, Bertha, you take the first lot. You did a lot of work for us here. So she said, okay. So she picked a lot where the house is now. She eventually picked that lot. So
which house is that one?
We're right at number 28 Brainett, right at the corner, right across from Mavis' shop.
Oh, okay.
Up on Co-op Hill there,
yeah.
The one with all the trees.
It's further back.
No, it's just inside the trees there.
Yeah, that's cool.
We put those trees. My dad and I,
You can tell when the trees are not local to the area.
We dug those trees up 50 years ago, my dad and I, back in the bush somewhere, brought them down and replanted them. And
that's really cool. They're really big trees now.
Quite large,
Yeah.
My mother even had a little garden in there. In the summer she put sort of regular flowers. Yeah. One winter she put a rose in the ground, I think it was frozen. Somebody came by one day and knocked on her door and said, Bertha, is that plant real out there?
Growing in the middle of winter.
So we lived there, and like I say, the early days of my being a teenager, and I had a dog team of 4, And I used to go out to the Delta every weekend, all winter long. And I traveled that Delta out there, and I used to travel the Delta with my dad when I was a kid. That's where I learned how to travel in the Delta. We got lots of nanniks and daddicks out there. Where all of my dad's aunties and great aunties, that's our nanniks and daddicks. Everybody's nannick and daddick, right?
Yeah.
You know, no such thing as hey uncle, hey auntie, you know.
Yeah.
They're all nanniks and daddicks. So they're all my nanniks and daddicks. And I used to show up there with my dog team. On Friday night, I used to leave Inuvik right after school. We used to finish at 4 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, when my mother came home from work, or my dad came home from work, I was already gone. I hook up my dogs, go down that back road, head out into the Delta across that big lake, all those portages and those trails.
Goodness, yeah.
And just travel. I was 12 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just me, my dogs. I had a little 22.
You never ran into any bears or?
No. The best friends you could ever have is the dog team.
The dog team, yeah.
Yes, and I never ran into anything, and I never had any issues. Sometimes the dogs got a little lively when the ptarmigan flew.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe a rabbit, or maybe a fox might be out on the trail. But we never had any issues.
Yeah.
And, I traveled all winter out in the Delta.
So all of your nannick and daddicks just knew when to expect you?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Friday night I used to go Inuvik, out across those big lakes, and then through that little river over there. Come to that forks over there, down that other little river, and then I come to Father's at the mouth of Quyanaq and the Mackenzie. That's where the fathers, the Roman Catholic fathers and the brothers were fishing for their residences in the Qaikaffi. And we called that Fathers. And then right across was Ishmael and Ruth, Anunik. I stop in there, have lunch with them on my way to my nannick and daddick, little Jim and Maggie, down the way. I get there Friday night, 9 o'clock, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I camp there for the night. And then Saturday, sometimes when I used to be there, my daddick used to be going to the trap 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
People got no time, no to say we got to go to work at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
They got up early in the morning. The coffee pot is on, wood stove, and he's got it by 5:30. He's got his dogs hooked up. Away he goes to the trap line.
Miss Donna would say that our people had to get up really early to check their trap line to beat the raven.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
And we always had to be, when we were running some snare lines, we always had to be up early to beat the foxes.
Yeah.
You have to be, otherwise the fox is going to
take your
you're
rabbit
feeding the
and-
animals.
yeah.
You should let them catch their own. Really.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we, when they're up at early in the morning, and I still remember that one time I got up, it was really a full moon. My daddick went this way, and I went this way out to the Mackenzie, to Sweeney's, and I was traveling in the moonlight, and it was just like daylight. And 12 years old, 13.
Not scared of anything.
No, not scared.
Just travel.
I got my best friends right there.
Yeah.
You can't have anything better than those
Than your dogs.
those dogs that are with you.
Yeah.
Then I go to Sweeney's, and if they're we have coffee or tea with them, and then I go through the portages, lots of trails.
Yeah.
I go through the portages in the Delta, and I come out at where my daddick, Hebert Allen's camp. I don't know if my daddick was there then, but Uncle Roy was there, I think. So I used to stop at Uncle Roy's, and I have visit with him, and then sometimes I used to visit all day, because if I got there Saturday afternoon, hockey night in Canada was on.
Yeah.
So we used to listen to hockey on the radio.
On the radio?
Everybody listened to hockey.
Yeah.
All of them guys in the Delta too. So we used to listen to hockey, and then I go from there to Uncle Sandy's, another 5 miles or so down the road, or 7 miles. And I get there maybe around supper time, and Uncle Sandy would say, "Tuding," he called me Tuding. Yeah. "What you doing here?" I said, "Come to visit." He said, "Where's your dad?" I said, "It's in Inuvik." Looks around, and 12 years old. "What you gonna do then?" I said, "Cap, you gotta cut wood. You can't stay. You don't stay for nothing."
You don't stay for nothing.
You don't stay for nothing. I cut wood,
Yeah.
and then feed the dogs and camp, and then the next day I go to my dad at Big Jim and Ida over there. That's Hank and them's mom and dad. Yeah. I go and I visit with them. I hang out with them because Benjamin is my age. Hank is my age. Sometimes we have a little dog race.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang out, and then then in the afternoon I go to Napoyak, 8 miles up, another 12 kilometers up, I guess, towards Inuvik. And Isaac and Sadie are there at Napoyak, and I have lunch with them in the afternoon, and I head home 4 o'clock. I get home about midnight, maybe 1 in the morning. Put my dogs away and feed them, and then I'm back to school Monday morning at 9 o'clock.
How many years you did that for?
I found a girlfriend.
That sounds
Long
like
time, boy.
that's usually how it goes, right?
Usually how it goes, yeah.
So you saw the development of Inuvik then?
I was here when Inuvik was being built, yes.
Yeah.
And I don't remember too much of the early building days, but I think when we were living in the tents, my father was working, I think he was going to get a job with Old Man Semler to start with. And but after a while, the government, whether it was territorial or federal, I'm not sure who it was, when they were there, they offered him a job to do work there. And then I think Papa said, you know, Victor, you got a family. You got family to feed. Government, they pay better than we could.
Yep.
So maybe work for them. So that's what he did. He got a job with them. So he was running what they call the John Deere. It's a little tractor.
Yeah.
It's not as big as a D6, I don't think. And he was running that. And Stephen Firth was the pile driver. He operated the pile driver. You could hear that pile driver pound, pound, pound. And they take all those. My dad would haul 2 or 3 logs from that down where the river park is right there. That's where they were peeling them. And they were preserving them right there.
Yeah.
So all under that park is soft. It's all that peeling from those logs. Pretty well, I think.
It's the docking, like the boat launch.
Where the dock is, yes.
Yeah.
That's where they did all the work to do all the peelings of the logs.
Yeah.
So my dad would haul those 2 logs or whatever to the site they were working on. And, you know, people that say we knew where, we just followed Victor, we knew where they were going to be building next.
Yeah. So I have a question. So like when I drive down by the river and you're looking at the really old logs that are put into the ground, those were the original logs when they used to tie up boats when they were starting to build Inuvik, right?
Those logs that you see by that dock,
yes,
they were put in there so that the ground won't fall over.
Oh, okay.
That's what they were put there for.
I just thought that people would tie their
that
boats
dock
up.
area, I think it was. It had gravel to start with.
Yeah.
And I believe when they reinforced that bank, that's what those are there for, was to reinforce that
Well,
bank.
they even go all the way down along
No, just that one area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they were able to build that dock and fill it up with gravel, and then they put, and that's where the some of the boats landed there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the early boats, and then later on when NTCL down the river, another 1.5 miles down, came to be. And that's where they went, and the big unloading and everything was there.
Talking to you about all of this in the past, you mentioned that there was another area where they wanted to put, not East 3, but another area where East 4.
We had another location over here called East 4.
East 4, yeah.
But I really believe when they were looking at places to build this community, they had West 1 over along the mountains over there, and West 2 along the mountains. We might have some elders that are still out there that might be able to correct me, but West 1 and West 2. I know I asked my father one time, why didn't we go to West 1 or West 2? He said that there was no room, not enough room for the amount of people that they wanted, they were expecting, and not enough room for fresh water, and not enough room for sounds like sewage disposal. So they found 2 other locations: East 3, where we sit today, and East 4, up by the airport.
Yeah.
And I believe they even started building at the East 4 for a bit, but they had to get the equipment into the creek at Airport Creek. They couldn't, not enough room in there for the barges to come in. So that was what I think, helped them decide to go from East 4 to East 3.
East 3, yeah.
So there were still a few, might be remnants of a few homes left up there.
Inuvik has grown a lot though, because even like I'm 35. I remember there was no Carmichael, like there was just one road, and I remember when they were just building Rayont, like
Yes.
Wolverine got extended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wait until your children get a little bit older. You watch what the changes are going to be for them.
That's so weird, because I remember when that whole area, do you know what I mean, where all the new houses are, like Carmichael and not Reliance, but the other one. I remember when that was all trees.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. When they built this, from our house, just above our house was nothing.
Yeah.
Our house up on Co-op Hill, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Auto Binder's house here, Auto and Ellen, nothing beyond that. And then Billy Quyanaq came in, and he built a big house, that 2-story house. I think it was an older one there.
Yeah.
Billy built that, but that was sort of at the end of the road. Now they've got another subdivision up there, and another one that goes up and then back towards the road.
Yeah.
And we, I think that when the government wanted to build this community, they were looking at trying to accommodate up to 5,000 people.
Oh, okay.
And we had the armed forces here.
Yes, we did.
They were here, and back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and I believe they left in 84, right about the time that we signed our claim with Canada, the Uvagut final agreement. The armed forces left.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they left or for what reason, but they were gone, and when they left, they maybe took 500-600 people with them.
Oh, okay.
So the numbers really dropped down again.
Dropped down.
So I think one time at the height of Inuvik, East 3 and Inuvik, what we know it as today, I think one time we had up to 4,000 people here.
I believe it, because like I said, I'm 35. When I was 15 years old, there was like 7-8 restaurants.
Oh, there's lots.
And a bowling alley.
Yeah.
Like.
Look what we got today. We're very low in. You know, I saw one of my friends talking about doing business in college. And what kind of a business could we run? Start another restaurant.
Yeah.
We can surely use
this
one in
community food, like,
we need,
is one of the biggest needs in our community.
You don't know how nice it is to be able to sit in a restaurant, have a cup of tea, or even just have a bowl of soup or something.
Long ago, I remember elders used to just sit around and have tea. Like, even at the Quick Stop, people used to just sit and visit, like, a long time ago. Like,
they used to.
Yeah.
Now we don't have that for a while.
That area.
I think everything, ever since COVID, a lot of things have really, really changed.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people out there that are very concerned about their health, concerned about the health of the community, and still don't really want to probably come out and open right up. So maybe give it another couple of years. Maybe we'll have some
go back to
restaurants.
that. Yeah, I'm really hoping. I hope that for Inuvik that we can, like, because the population did get smaller when all the restaurants started closing, and then we got new hotels. But it's growing again.
Yeah,
so
I think we're sitting at about 3,200 people right now.
Yeah.
And we've been sitting there since pre-COVID. I'm not sure what the numbers are today, but I guess we'll probably find out when they do the next census.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting though. I love talking to elders about how it was back then, and just thinking of how much stuff has changed in not a long period of time.
No,
like
when I was a kid growing up, that the Nova wasn't there.
No.
This building wasn't here. A couple of people started up a hotel over here called the Finto.
The Finto, yeah.
Yeah, that was there. This was all just otherwise empty.
Yeah.
And then the hospital was over there.
The big yellow hospital.
The hospital, and then there were some buildings over here, some more private homes at this end of town. Excuse me, compared to the other end of town.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we can talk about you've had like a very long, successful career in what you like to do.
You know, when I was a teenager growing up in the Delta, I spent a lot of time in the Delta itself. And in the winter, I was out there with my dog team. And in the summer, I ended up I know a couple of times I worked 2 summers with the research lab, 1 year at Yaya Lakes, working with university students that came in from doing practicum or whatever they call it, you know. And one of them was studying the weather at Yaya Lakes. And I spent the summer with him out there. And the next year I got a job just downriver from Inuvik. And I ended up doing a lot of expediting for the researchers that were there, studying the temperature of the water, the salinity of the water, and so on. And that's what I did. And eventually I continued to work. And then when I was like 17, my world sort of went a little crazy because there was a lot of oil and gas activity here. A lot of those oil and gas people were staying right in Inuvik. They weren't going back to where they came from in Edmonton or Barhead or whatever community they came from. They stayed here. Lots of alcohol in our community. It was causing a lot of turmoil in many families, mine included. And I just couldn't hang around anymore. So I dropped out of high school at 17, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But you know, my mother said, "You can't stay at the house. You can't. I've got a mortgage to pay. You're not in school." I had grade 10 education, and so I think it was the winter just before I turned 18. I ended up going south for a while with a friend and tried to do some work down there, and I couldn't too darn much snow. So I ended up coming home. And I got a job with the oil and gas company out at a place called West Channel over there. I worked there for a couple of shifts. I was a camp attendant. I washed all their clothes, all their shorts, all their socks, and stinky socks that they had, all their sheets, and took care of all the garbage in there. I was just a kid, you know, looking for work and trying to do something because I had no place to stay. So if I was going to stay at my mother's, I had to help pay the mortgage. So I did that. Finally, I got done with that one, and we didn't really part on good terms with those guys, whoever they were. God bless them anyways, if they're listening. And I started talking to a friend of mine named Otto Binder. And he became one of my mentors in the RCMP. And he said, do something positive. Why don't you join the RCMP?
Yeah.
So I put in an application in, and I ended up getting a job while waiting for that application to process. I got a job with Mackenzie Valley Experimental Pipeline down Navy Road. And I was working there, 18 years of age. And in the fall of 1971, an RCMP buddy of mine came along and said, "You remember the RCMP?" I said, "You got to be kidding." No, he said, "Here we go." So I worked for a year or so. And then my friend, my buddy Glenn came along, and he was a full-fledged member of the RCMP. We're both single, we're both the same age. And he said, "Do something." He said, "Don't just sit around here and sit in this guard room for the next 20 years. He said, "Do something else maybe. Why don't you join the RCMP and go to training in Regina, Saskatchewan?" How do I do that? Well, I needed grade 11. He said, "Go back to school." So I did. I went back to school and I got my grade 11. And I was able to write an exam to get to training. I wrote an exam. Believe it or not, I failed. I failed English. I did. And when I signed on in the RCMP, it was a 3-year contract. We signed contracts in them days. It was a 3-year contract, 71 to 74. I would have been finished in November of 74. So I failed English and I couldn't get into training. So our corporal down there says, "We'll give you an opportunity to write again." You know, so I did. And I passed the second round. And I went to training in July of 1974, 49 years ago.
Yeah. And you were a police officer for how long?
For 24 years and 10 months.
And you got to stay here in Inuvik.
I was in Inuvik the first couple of years. I was working in the guard room, what they call the provo section. And then when I went to training, once I graduated depot, I went to a place called Bicycle, Alberta, just outside of Calgary. And then I went to Calgary, Alberta for a while. Took part even in the Calgary Stampede. And then I went to Manning, Alberta, and Northern Alberta. I had to apply to come north.
Yeah.
I couldn't just come north because I might have wanted to come north. I applied, and we finally, in 1978, we had one daughter born in Calgary, and our second daughter was ready to be born, and she was born in Peace River, and 10 days later we were in Whitehorse, Yukon.
Yeah. Oh, so you were living there for a while.
Yeah, Whitehorse, Yukon, there for about 4 years. And then we went to a small town, Pelly Crossing, between Whitehorse and Dawson. And we were there for like 14 months, I think, and then from there to Watson Lake, south end of Yukon.
So you just made your way back up north.
Yeah, and then worked our way back actually to Tuck.
Yeah.
We went to Tuck, and then we
were
here.
Went to Tuck,
and
yeah.
every couple of years, when we were raising our family, every couple of years we were sort of getting itchy fingers, like where are we going to go next?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did 8 moves, I think. Yeah, all together. I mean,
Yeah.
And Tuck to Inuvik was our final one.
So, in all of this, because I'm going to lead into what you do now. When did you become involved with the Northern Games?
When I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it was 1967, 68 that Uncle Edward got a hold of a bunch of us kids and said, we've got to do some Northern Games, start teaching us Northern Games in front of his house down there. With just a piece of plywood, I think we had. Yeah, we just played games. Eventually we got room to go into the old Ingamo Hall. We were there, and then it really started to expand in 1970 when the Arctic Winter Games were happening in Yellowknife. And at that time, Jim Smith was the commissioner for the Yukon, and Stuart Hodgson was commissioner for the NWT, and there was a governor out of Alaska. All three of them decided that they should have some games in the north for the northern kids because they don't have an opportunity at Canada Games and some of the bigger games. So when they decided to do that, they're going to go to Yellowknife. I mean, there were people like Nellie Cornier, people like Doug Dietrich, Billy Day, Kenneth Pillaluk, Emmanuel Felix, Tom Kalenic, and a lot of those elders that talked to Felix Nuyaviak, they all talked to people like Edward and said, you got to get these games going, got to do something.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose our culture.
Yeah.
And we don't want to lose that part of our culture. So we started playing. So 1969, 70, we had our first Arctic Northern Games here. We went to the Arctic Winter Games over there in Yellowknife. 1971, Arctic Northern Games here again. 72, we went to Northern Games. We went to Whitehorse to demonstrate the games because it still wasn't something that was happening at the Arctic Winter Games level. So when those leaders like Nellie and Pillaluk and them guys and got a hold of Edward, they went to government and said, hey, what's so Arctic Winter Games about basketball?
Yeah.
What's so Arctic Winter Games about badminton?
Yeah.
Where are the Arctic Games you're talking about? So that's where we came into the picture.
Yeah.
And just a bunch of kids demonstrating our games in Yellowknife.
It wasn't competition back then.
No competition,
Yeah.
just demonstrating. We Yellowknife in 1970, Whitehorse, Yukon 1972, and Fairbanks 1974.
Yeah.
After Fairbanks, I went to training in the RCMP. When I come out in 75 in Alberta, Uncle Ed called one time and said, we're going to Pincher Creek, Alberta, to the Canada Winter Games. Can you meet us? So I met them down there. We did Northern Games at Canada Winter Games.
Yeah.
And then 76, I was in Alberta. I missed the games. The first games were at Shefferville, Quebec, Northern Quebec. And then 78, I missed the games. They were at Fort Smith and Hay River. But 78 I got transferred to Whitehorse, Yukon. So the sports group in the Yukon got a hold of me, and my friend Eddie Arian said, "Can you guys help us do Northern games for the kids, Arctic sport?" So we did. So we brought our first team Yukon to the Arctic Winter Games 1980 in Whitehorse.
That's cool.
And they've been going pretty well ever since, every couple of years. If not there, then at Northern Games here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been a part of it, must be 50 plus years now, I guess.
You were like a part of like training, and now it's like on the board, right?
Yeah, I started out trying to do the 1 foot high kick and that. Maybe 1 foot, maybe even 7 inches. We didn't go very high. We had to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
We had to teach our body how to play our games, you know, our games.
Yeah.
And I just played those games, and then eventually I took part in competition, and then eventually I became a coach, and then I became an official in the games, and then now I do a lot of the emceeing for our events.
Yeah, you do emceeing for almost every event.
For many events in our community, yes, I've been a volunteer. We want to talk about volunteers. My mother was a volunteer in Inuvik, and my father, when we moved into Inuvik in the spring of 1956. We go to this in June of '56. In March of 1957, my father, Auntie, Granny Sumler, and my mother and them, they got them Uncle Hebert, I think, and them over here, Daddock and them, that were working up here to build a big igloo down there.
Oh, cool.
They had some people from Eastern Arctic, I think, were working here helping build this community. So we built a big giant igloo, and that was the first queen. They had a queen's ball. Oh yeah, they really, 1957, small community, this place. Yeah, Florence Hagen from here was the first queen.
That's cool.
Yeah, so my parents were very busy, very civic minded, mind you, and they were also very volunteering a lot.
Yeah.
So my mother did that, my father did that. So when I came along and got a little bit older in life, it just sort of fell into place that I was going to volunteer as well, and I've been doing that for a long time too.
At almost every event. You
well,
must
not
need
almost every
almost.
event. Lots of events.
A lot of events, because I try to go to every single event that I can, and you're always on the stage.
Yeah, and
it's like Uncle Jerry's up there.
I spend a lot of time on the stage, and I spend quite a bit of time now, not only volunteering a lot of my time, but sharing a little bit of the history of our community. Yeah. Because I was one of those, part of that, sort of that first family, I guess, that came in, you know. So, yeah, and that was what we did, and we continue to do today. Yeah. Because we're getting ready. Right now, we're looking at, after I left the RCMP in 1996, I got a job with Parks Canada, working visitor services, basically trying to make sure that the information that was going out to the general public
is accurate.
Anywhere in the international world or anything was as accurate as could be. Yep. And again, telling the stories of the Western Arctic National Parks, Uvagut National Park in North Yukon, first national park in Canada, that's the result of an indigenous land claim. Yep. So when we signed the IFA in 1984, because we're all a part of that IFA.
We are, yes.
When they signed that, the Inuviat ceded that land over there in North Yukon to Canada. Yeah. For her people, and for the people to enjoy that part of the world. Eventually, they got another piece of land up there in north end of Banks Island, ऊvagut National Park. Yep. And that one too is a national park, and they have another one outside of Quyanaq now, Tunnganarniq. Yeah, and that's another national park, and now that's gone down now into Tuktut is sort of gone into the Sawtoo, because Sawtoo is part of that, and and they've got another one, Sayuadacho. It's a National Historic Site just outside of Delaney. So the Inuviat up here and the Delaney people are sort of connected to it, you know, and yeah, it's all national parks and national historic sites. And
can I just say, out of like my job personally, what I love, when I get to do this, when I get to talk to people who know this stuff, I love how much are people really committed to preserving and the development of our people. Like starting with the IFA and then moving into our land and moving into our food. And
our IFA is a living document, and to all our beneficiaries that are out there, just remember that IFA, the Inuit Final Agreement, that came off the back of all those hunters and those trappers.
It did.
You know,
and,
they turned out that document called the Western Arctic Land Claim Document, I believe, or something like that, or today we call it the Inuit Final Agreement. It's a living document.
Yeah.
So anything you want to know about the Western Arctic and so on is all in that document. Read it and become familiar with it, because it's a living document. It's something that's going to help guide your children and the grandchildren and so on in the future.
Oh, I love being in Inuvialuit.
Yes.
Being in Inuvialuit, a part of the Inuvialuit.
We have a very, very large piece of land.
Yes, we do, yeah.
And, you know, it's good to be able to be out, walk out there on that land and pick the muck picks. Sometimes sit on those hills and wait for the geese to come in.
Yep.
Or walk on the tundra and maybe get tuk-tuk, you know, and or even set a net in the river and get some nice fish.
Yep, our land provides.
Our land provides.
Does, yes.
As long as we look after this land.
As long as we do.
it will look after us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like people like you and so many other elders from here and all the communities really all play a part.
Yes,
in
there's so many of them.
And,
you know, even now that we have now, ever since the claim was there, we have a regional corporation that's the chairs of each one of our communities are part of the main board. And then each one of our communities has their own community corporation that has a chair and 6 members, I think, and pretty well. And some of our communities have an elders committee as well. Yeah. I sit on the elders committee for Inuvik and been on this committee for a couple of years. But it's good to sit down there and just sit down and, you know, talk about our community, talk about some of the things that we might be able to do for elders, because some of our elders are aging, you know. And we want to make sure that they're as comfortable as can be, and they still get as much as they can out of what they did with the Inuvialuit Final Agreement.
Because what's the most important thing? We take care of each other. Like our Inuvialuit people, we all take care of each other. Yeah.
Yes. Right now we have not only that, but we have Aisido, and Aisido is gathering food from our communities, our traditional food, muktuk, fish, muskox, moose and caribou, and geese. Eventually we'll probably end up with reindeer too. Yeah. When the herd gets, I think when the herd maybe gets more solid, I guess, maybe we'll end up with reindeer, but you know, and with that they're processing it, and every 6 months they go to all the members in every one of our communities, whether it's single mothers or single parents and elders, and they get a box of food that's country food. Even in the smaller communities, the community corporation hires people to go and get ice for all the elders. Yes. That's amazing. Yeah, and they're hauling. I know this spring in Inuvik they were getting geese, you know, and hunters would get like 20 geese, as long as they're all clean. Bring them in. They make a little bit of money on it. Yeah, which is good. I mean, because it's providing for the whole community. Yeah, it costs a lot to get out there. Gas is not cheap up here. It's not, no at all. No. And it comes in handy when they're able to do that. Not only provide some food for those families, but be able to get just a little bit more with their the cost of living. With their own cost of living. Yeah. And the other one that's always a concern to us is food security. You know, if you go, I was in Whitehorse a couple of weeks ago, and you go down and you buy fresh fruit at a cost, you know, and then you come to Inuvik and you try to get that same item, and it's like golly, it's like double the price.
It is
even $10 more. You might get it 7 there, 17 over here. And you know, it's just really hard to.
It is.
It's hard to have sometimes lots of fresh fruit and stuff like that for your families.
That's why you go berry picking.
Yeah, and that's
as soon as you're on the ITH.
The land provides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear down in Tuck, I think they said their ukpiks are already out, but they're really small. So we give it a few weeks. We need some rain.
We do need rain.
Yeah.
Maybe tonight.
Yeah. So maybe tonight, maybe we'll find some of our Quechan relatives. We'll ask them to do a dance.
Oh yeah.
Do a rain dance.
So what's coming up next week?
Next week we're going to be doing the Youth Northern Games in Tuck.
Yep.
Starting on the 19th of July. And right now we have approximately 1,000 youth, 100 youth, not 1,000.
Yeah.
We got about 100 youth registered. We have room for close to 200, I guess.
Yeah.
But we're looking for communities to send some of the students down and to take part in the youth events that are going to be happening in Tuck. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. Next week. So right now, a lot of us that are part of the board and the committee, a lot of us are going down on Sunday to help out, get ready for a couple of days. So we've got lots of stuff on the go, and it's exciting.
So much fun.
It's exciting. We're looking at having, of course, we'll have some of our own country food there. I mean, you know, we'll have some available because not only for some of us, but I hear we have quite a number of tourists in the community, so they might want to come down and maybe have a taste of some of our country food. And then we'll have Gunniq duck. We'll have that available.
I have a question. Is there going to be a square dance?
We're going to have fiddle music and drumming.
Oh my goodness! Okay, now I know I'm going.
We're going to have good man and good woman events for the kids.
Oh, I'm so excited! This is going to be so fun.
I believe we got some seals coming in from one of the communities. I hear one of our elders from one of the communities said, "I donate char for you guys too."
Oh my goodness!
You know, people are just excited that something's going to happen.
I'm so excited.
Yes,
it's like
we're ready to go. I mean, we're not quite ready yet, but lots of work to get done. But we got a pretty solid core of volunteers. Yeah. And I think anything that ever happens in any of our communities, it happens because of good volunteers.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and organizers that don't mind sitting up for 10, 12 hours a day getting things ready.
I really admire you and all of the other people who do volunteering and emceeing. And we had Tanya Grubin on, and she talked about public speaking and emceeing, and I was like, I want to do that one day. Now I know you need to volunteer. Yeah. Like you need to get out
volunteer.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
I've been
not just volunteer to MC, but I mean volunteer in general, just for these events to happen.
And volunteers make things happen. Yeah. And we have a really good core of volunteers for our Northern Games right now. Eventually, we're going to get done with this one, and then somewhere along the road, we'll be planning for maybe a circumpolar one in the next couple of years.
That one will be fun. That's going to be a
huge,
fun one.
Be a huge project, but something we can do.
ICS will be there.
Yes, something we can do.
Well, thank you for coming on and being on the show, Quyanaq. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share before we end?
Northern Games next week, folks. Come on out and come and watch the youth perform and for you, and show them your encouragement. Yeah.
We'll see them all. See them all in Tunnganarniq.
Yes, see them all in Tunnganarniq next week, starting on Wednesday, July 19th. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Quyanaq, thank you for joining in on the show, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for coming on again. Yes. Yeah.
ungengaya